If you find yourself in an unpleasant or unsatisfactory situation, completely accepting the moment as it is will relieve suffering. You will rise above it. However, you may wonder where the energy or motivation for change comes from if there is no dissatisfaction. In a state of surrender, clarity emerges, revealing what needs to be done. You will take action, focusing on one thing at a time. Observe nature and see how everything gets accomplished without dissatisfaction or unhappiness. This is why Jesus said, "Look at the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin." If your overall situation is unsatisfactory, separate this instant and surrender to what is. This surrender allows your state of consciousness to transcend external conditions, freeing you from reaction and resistance. From there, assess the specifics of your situation. Ask yourself if there's anything you can do to change or improve it. If so, take appropriate action. Focus not on the multitude of tasks ahead, but on the one thing you can do now. This does not mean you shouldn't plan. Planning may indeed be your immediate action. However, avoid getting lost in future projections that pull you away from the now. Any action you take may not yield immediate results. Until it does, do not resist what is. If no action can be taken, and you cannot remove yourself from the situation, use it as an opportunity to deepen your surrender, your connection to the now, and your being. When you enter this timeless dimension of the present, change often occurs in unexpected ways, requiring little doing on your part. Life becomes cooperative, dissolving fears, guilt, and inertia that previously held you back. Do not confuse surrender with apathy or a lack of concern. Such attitudes are tainted with negativity and hidden resentment, representing resistance rather than true surrender. As you surrender, direct your attention inward to identify any residual resistance. Remain alert. Pockets of resistance may hide in thoughts or unacknowledged emotions. Letting go of resistance is challenging. Acknowledge the presence of resistance when it arises. Observe how your mind creates it, labeling the situation or others involved. Witness the energy of the emotion and recognize that this resistance serves no purpose. By focusing your attention on the now, unconscious resistance becomes conscious, and that is the end of it. You cannot be conscious and unhappy simultaneously. Consciousness and negativity cannot coexist. While you may believe you are conscious of your unhappy feelings, in reality, you may be identified with them, perpetuating the cycle through compulsive thinking. True consciousness exists in the present moment, where negativity dissolves almost instantly. Consider whether you choose unhappiness. If you did not choose it, how did it arise, and what purpose does it serve? The truth is that unhappiness persists because of the time you give it. It feeds on the past and future. Remove time through intense present moment awareness, and unhappiness cannot survive. But do you truly want it to die? Have you had enough? Who would you be without it? Until you practice surrender, the spiritual dimension remains an abstract concept, something you read about, discuss, and believe in. It only becomes a living reality when you surrender. This surrender elevates the energy you emanate and directs your life at a higher vibrational frequency than the mind energy that dominates our world. Surrendering allows spiritual energy to flow into your life, creating no suffering for yourself or others. Unlike mind energy, it does not pollute the earth and is not subject to the law of polarities, which states that nothing exists without its opposite. Those who operate on mind energy remain unaware of the existence of spiritual energy, which belongs to a different reality, and will create a different world when enough people enter a surrendered state, free from negativity. If humanity is to survive, it will rely on this higher energy. Jesus referred to it when he said, "Blessed are the gentle, for they shall have the earth for their possession." This silent, yet intense presence dissolves unconscious patterns of the mind. External conditions that were previously resisted tend to shift or dissolve rapidly through surrender. It becomes a powerful transformer of situations and relationships. What about surrendering in personal relationships? If someone seeks to manipulate or control you, does that mean you should surrender to them? Such individuals are cut off from being and unconsciously seek energy and power from others. It is true that only an unconscious person will attempt to manipulate others, but it is equally true that only an unconscious person can be manipulated. Resisting or fighting unconscious behavior in others only leads you to become unconscious yourself. However, surrender does not mean allowing others to use you. It is entirely possible to say no firmly and clearly while maintaining inner non-resistance. When you say no, let it stem from insight and a clear realization of what is right for you in that moment. Let it be a high-quality no, free from negativity, and thus free from further suffering. If you find yourself in an unpleasant work situation and struggle to surrender, take immediate action. Speak up or do something to change the situation or remove yourself from it. Take responsibility for your life. Do not allow negativity to dwell within you or affect the earth. If you cannot take action, such as in a prison situation, you face two choices: resistance or surrender. Non-resistance must be practiced in the external conduct of our lives, including in response to violence. It is essential to focus on the inner aspect, which will transform your external actions, relationships, and overall conduct. If you cannot accept what is, you will struggle to accept others as they are, leading to judgment, criticism, and attempts to change them. Moreover, if you make the now a means to an end, you will treat every person you encounter as a means to an end, prioritizing what you can gain over genuine connection. Allow me to illustrate how surrender works in relationships. When involved in an argument or conflict, observe how defensive you become when your position is attacked. Feel the force of your aggression as you attack the other's position, and notice your attachment to your views. Acknowledge this energy of the egoic mind and feel it fully. One day, in the midst of conflict, you may realize you have a choice and decide to drop your reaction to see what happens. This is surrender, not merely dropping the reaction verbally while maintaining an air of superiority, but letting go of the entire mental and emotional energy field fighting for power. The ego is cunning. You must remain alert and honest with yourself to determine whether you have truly relinquished your identification with a mental position. If you feel light, clear, and deeply at peace, that is a sign of true surrender. Observe what happens to the other person's position when you no longer energize it through resistance. True communication begins only when identification with mental positions is released. What about non-resistance in the face of violence or aggression? Non-resistance does not mean doing nothing. It means that any action taken is non-reactive. Remember the wisdom in Eastern martial arts. Do not resist the opponent's force. Yield to overcome. Sometimes, doing nothing while in a state of intense presence can be a powerful transformer and healer. In Taoism, there exists a concept called Wu Wei, often translated as actionless activity or quiet sitting. In ancient China, this was considered a high virtue. This state differs from ordinary inactivity born of fear or indecision. True doing nothing implies inner non-resistance and intense alertness. If action is required, you will respond to the situation from a place of conscious presence, free from conditioned thinking, including the notion of non-violence. The ego believes strength lies in resistance. In truth, resistance cuts you off from being the true source of power. Resistance is weakness masquerading as strength. The ego exists in a constant state of resistance, playing roles to mask weakness, which is actually your inherent power. Until there is surrender, unconscious role-playing constitutes much of human interaction. Through surrender, You shed ego defenses and false masks, becoming simple and real. The ego fears this vulnerability, believing it leads to harm. Yet, it is only through letting go of resistance and embracing vulnerability that you discover true invulnerability. If someone is seriously ill and fully accepts their condition, do they not risk losing their will to recover? Surrender is an inner acceptance of what is, without reservations. We are discussing your life in this moment, not the conditions surrounding it. Illness is part of your life situation, which has both a past and a future. The past and future form a continuous continuum, unless the redeeming power of the now is activated through conscious presence. Beneath the various conditions that constitute your life situation lies something deeper, your very being in the timeless now. In this state, there are no problems. Thus, there is no illness. The belief in a label attached to your condition reinforces its reality, giving it an illusion of continuity in time. By focusing on the present and refraining from mental labeling, illness is reduced to physical sensations, such as pain or discomfort. This is what you surrender to, not the idea of illness. Allow suffering to draw you into the present moment, into a state of intense conscious awareness. Use it for enlightenment. Surrender does not change what is, at least not directly. It transforms you. When you are transformed, your entire world transforms because the world is merely a reflection of your inner state. If you dislike what you see in the mirror of life, attacking the image is madness. Instead, if you accept the image and embrace it, it will reciprocate positively. Illness is not the problem. You are the problem as long as the egoic mind controls your perspective. When ill, do not feel that you have failed, nor feel guilty or blame life for your circumstances. Such thoughts are resistance. Instead, use your experiences for enlightenment. In every hardship, find the opportunity for growth and awareness. Withdraw time from your illness. Do not allow it a past or future. Let it compel you into intense present moment awareness and observe the transformation that occurs. Become an alchemist, transmuting suffering into consciousness and disaster into enlightenment. If you feel anger at the suggestion to surrender, that indicates the illness has become part of your identity, and you are now protecting both your identity and the illness itself. The condition labeled as illness has nothing to do with who you truly are. When disaster strikes, as far as the still unconscious majority of the population is concerned, only a critical limit situation has the potential to crack the hard shell of the ego and force them into surrender, leading to an awakened state. A limit situation arises when, through some disaster, drastic upheaval, deep loss, or suffering, your whole world is shattered and no longer makes sense. It is an encounter with death, whether physical or psychological. The egoic mind, the creator of this world, collapses. Out of the ashes of the old world, a new one can then come into being. There is no guarantee that even a limit situation will lead to awakening, but the potential is always there. Some people's resistance to what is can intensify in such situations, leading them into a descent into hell. In others, there may be only partial surrender, but even that can provide a certain depth and serenity that were not present before. Parts of the ego may break off, allowing small amounts of the radiance and peace that lie beyond the mind to shine through. Limit situations have produced many miracles. There have been murderers on death row, awaiting execution, who, in the last hours of their lives, experienced the ego's collapse and the deep joy and peace that come with it. Their inner resistance to the situation became so intense that it produced unbearable suffering, leaving them with nowhere to run and nothing to do to escape it, not even a projected future. They were forced into complete acceptance of the unacceptable, into surrender. In this way, they were able to enter a state of grace that brings redemption and a complete release from the past. It is not the limit situation itself that makes room for the miracle of grace and redemption, but the act of surrender. Whenever any kind of disaster strikes, be it illness, disability, loss of home or fortune, the breakup of a close relationship, or the death of a loved one, know that there's another side to it. You are just one step away from something incredible, a complete alchemical transmutation of the base metal of pain and suffering into gold. That one step is called surrender. I do not mean to say that you will become happy in such situations. You will not. Fear and pain can be transmuted into an inner peace and serenity that come from a very deep place, from the unmanifested itself. It is the peace of God, which passes all understanding. Compared to this peace, happiness is quite a shallow thing. With this radiant peace comes the realization, not on the level of the mind, but within the depth of your being, that you are indestructible and immortal. This is not a belief. It is absolute certainty that needs no external evidence or proof. I read about a Stoic philosopher in ancient Greece who, when told that his son had died in an accident, replied, "I knew he was not immortal." Is that surrender? If it is, I do not want it. There are some situations in which surrender seems unnatural and inhuman. Being cut off from your feelings is not surrender. We cannot know the philosopher's inner state when he spoke those words. In certain extreme situations, it may still be impossible for you to accept the now. However, you always get a second chance at surrender. Your first chance is to surrender each moment to the reality of that moment, knowing that what is cannot be undone. You say yes to what is, or accept what isn't. Then you do what you have to do, whatever the situation requires. If you abide in this state of acceptance, you create no more negativity, no more suffering, and no more unhappiness. You then live in a state of non-resistance, a state of grace and lightness, free of struggle. Whenever you are unable to do that, either because you lack enough conscious presence to prevent some habitual resistance, or because the condition is so extreme as to be absolutely unacceptable, then you create some form of pain or suffering. It may appear that the situation is creating the suffering, but ultimately that is not so. Your resistance does. Here is your second chance at surrender. If you cannot accept what is outside, then accept what is inside. If you cannot accept the external condition, accept the internal condition. This means you should not resist the pain. Allow it to be there. Surrender to the grief, despair, fear, loneliness, or whatever form this suffering takes. Witness it without labeling it mentally. Embrace it and see how the miracle of surrender transmutes deep suffering into deep peace. This is your crucifixion. Let it become your resurrection and ascension. I do not see how one can surrender to suffering, as you pointed out. Suffering is not surrender. How could you surrender to non-surrender? Forget about surrender for a moment. When your pain is deep, all talk of surrender will probably seem futile and meaningless. You will likely have a strong urge to escape from it rather than surrender to it. You don't want to feel what you feel. What could be more normal? But there is no escape, no way out. There are many pseudo-escapes. Work, drink, drugs, anger, projection, suppression, and so on. But they don't free you from the pain. Suffering does not diminish in intensity when you make it unconscious. When you deny emotional pain, everything you do or think, as well as your relationships, become contaminated with it. You broadcast it, so to speak, as the energy you emanate, and others will pick it up subliminally. If they are unconscious, they may even feel compelled to attack or hurt you in some way, or you may hurt them in an unconscious projection of your pain. You attract and manifest whatever corresponds to your inner state. When there is no way out, there is still always a way through. So don't turn away from the pain. Face it. Feel it fully. Don't think about it. Express it if necessary, but don't create a script in your mind around it. Give all your attention to the feeling, not to the person, event, or situation that seems to have caused it. Stay present with your whole being, with every cell of your body. As you do so, you bring light into this darkness. This is the flame of your consciousness. At this stage, you need not be concerned with surrender anymore. It has happened already. Full attention is full acceptance, and acceptance is surrender. By giving full attention, you use the power of the now, which is the power of your presence. No hidden pocket of resistance can survive in it. Presence removes time. Without time, no suffering or negativity can survive. The acceptance of suffering is a journey into death. Facing deep pain, allowing it to be, taking your attention into it is to enter death consciously. When you have died this death, you realize that there is no death and nothing to fear. Only the ego dies. Imagine a ray of sunlight that has forgotten it is an inseparable part of the sun and deludes itself into believing it has to fight for survival and create and cling to an identity other than the sun. With the death of this delusion, would it not be incredibly liberating? Do you want an easy death? Would you rather die without pain, without agony, than die to the past every moment and let the light of your presence shine away the heavy, time-bound self you thought of as you? The way of the cross. There are many accounts of people who say they have found God through their deep suffering. The Christian expression, the way of the cross, points to the same thing. We are concerned with nothing else here. Strictly speaking, they did not find God through their suffering, because suffering implies resistance. They found God through surrender, through total acceptance of what is, into which they were forced by their intense suffering. They must have realized on some level that their pain was self-created. How do you equate surrender with finding God? Since resistance is inseparable from the mind, relinquishment of resistance means surrender is the end of the mind as your master, the imposter pretending to be you, the false God. All judgment and negativity dissolve, and the realm of being, obscured by the mind, opens up. Suddenly, a great stillness arises within you, an unfathomable sense of peace. Within that peace, there is great joy, and within that joy there is love. At the innermost core, there is the sacred, the immeasurable, that which cannot be named. I don't call it finding God, because how can you find that which was never lost? The very life that you are. The word God is limiting, not only because of thousands of years of misperception and misuse, but also because it implies an entity other than you. God is being itself, not a being. There can be no subject-object relationship here. No duality, no you and God. Realization is the most natural thing there is. The amazing and incomprehensible fact is not that you can become conscious of God, but that you are not conscious of God. The way of the cross, as you mentioned, is the old way to enlightenment. Until recently, it was the only way, but don't dismiss it or underestimate its efficacy. It still works. The way of the cross is a complete reversal. It means that the worst thing in your life, your cross, turns into the best thing that ever happened to you by forcing you into surrender, into death, compelling you to become as nothing, to become as God, because God too is nothing. At this time, as far as the unconscious majority of humans is concerned, the way of the cross is still the only way. They will only awaken through further suffering, and enlightenment as a collective phenomenon will be predictably preceded by vast upheavals. This process reflects the workings of certain universal laws that govern the growth of consciousness and was foreseen by some seers. It is described, among other places, in the Book of Revelation or Apocalypse, though cloaked in obscure and sometimes impenetrable symbology. This suffering is inflicted not by God, but by humans on themselves and on each other, as well as by certain defensive measures that the Earth, an intelligent, living organism, will take to protect herself from the onslaught of human madness. However, There is a growing number of humans alive today whose consciousness is sufficiently evolved not to need any more suffering before realizing enlightenment. You may be one of them. Enlightenment through suffering. The way of the cross means to be forced into the kingdom of heaven, kicking and screaming. You finally surrender because you cannot stand the pain anymore. But the pain could go on for a long time until this happens. Enlightenment consciously chooses a means to relinquish attachment to past and future, and to make the now the main focus of your life. It means choosing to dwell in a state of presence rather than in time. It means saying yes to what is. You then don't need pain anymore. How much more time do you think you will need before you are able to say, I will create no more pain, no more suffering? How much more pain do you need before you can make that choice? If you think that you need more time, you will get more time and more pain. Time and pain are inseparable. The power to choose. What about all those people who seem to actually want to suffer? I have a friend whose partner is physically abusive toward her, and her previous relationship was similar. Why does she choose such men? And why is she refusing to get out of that situation now? Why do so many people actually choose pain? I know that the word choose is a favorite term in New Age circles, but it isn't entirely accurate in this context. It is misleading to say that someone chose a dysfunctional relationship or any other negative situation in their life. Choice implies consciousness, a high degree of consciousness. Without it, you have no choice. Choice begins the moment you disidentify from the mind and its conditioned patterns, the moment you become present. Until you reach that point, you are unconscious, spiritually speaking. This means you are compelled to think, feel, and act in certain ways according to the conditioning of your mind. That is why Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." This is not related to intelligence in the conventional sense. I have met many highly intelligent and educated people who were also completely unconscious, which is to say completely identified with their minds. In fact, if mental development and increased knowledge are not counterbalanced by a corresponding growth in consciousness, the potential for unhappiness and disaster is very great. Your friend is stuck in a relationship with an abusive partner, not for the first time. Why? No choice. The conditioned mind, as it is shaped by the past, always seeks to recreate what it knows and is familiar with. Even if it is painful, at least it is familiar. The mind always adheres to the known. The unknown is dangerous because it has no control over it. That is why the mind dislikes and ignores the present moment. Present moment awareness creates a gap, not only in the stream of mind, but also in the past-future continuum. Nothing truly new and creative can come into this world except through that gap, that clear space of infinite possibility. So your friend, being identified with her mind, may be recreating a pattern learned in the past in which intimacy and abuse are inseparably linked. Alternatively, she may be acting out a pattern learned in early childhood, according to which she is unworthy and deserves to be punished. It is also possible that she lives a large part of her life through the pain body, which always seeks more pain on which to feed. Her partner has his own unconscious patterns that complement hers. Of course, her situation is self-created, but who or what is the self that is doing the creating? A mental emotional pattern from the past? Why make a self out of it? If you tell her that she has chosen her condition or situation, you are reinforcing her state of mind identification. But is her mind pattern who she is? Is her self, her true identity, derived from the past? Show your friend how to be the observing presence behind her thoughts and emotions. Tell her about the pain body and how to free herself from it. Teach her the art of inner body awareness. Demonstrate to her the meaning of presence. As soon as she is able to access the power of the now and thereby break through her conditioned past, she will have a choice. Nobody chooses dysfunction, conflict, or pain. Nobody chooses insanity. They happen because there is not enough presence in you to dissolve the past. No light to dispel the darkness. You are not fully here. You have not quite woken up yet. In the meantime, the conditioned mind is running your life. Similarly, if you are one of the many people who have issues with their parents, if you still harbor resentment about something they did or did not do, then you still believe that they had a choice, that they could have acted differently. It always looks as if people had a choice, but that is an illusion. As long as your mind, with its conditioned patterns, runs your life, as long as you are your mind, what choice do you have? None. You were not even there. The mind-identified state is severely dysfunctional. It is a form of insanity. Almost everyone is suffering from this illness in varying degrees. The moment you realize this, there can be no more resentment. How can you resent someone's illness? The only appropriate response is compassion. So that means nobody is responsible for what they do. I don't like that idea. If you are run by your mind, although you may have no choice, you will still suffer the consequences of your unconsciousness. You will create further suffering. You will bear the burden of fear, conflict, problems, and pain. The suffering thus created will eventually force you out of your unconscious state. What you say about choice also applies to forgiveness. I suppose, the questioner says, you need to be fully conscious and surrender before you can forgive. Forgiveness is a term that has been used for 2,000 years, but most people have a very limited view of what it means. You cannot truly forgive yourself or others as long as you derive your sense of self from the past. Only through accessing the power of the now, which is your own power, can there be true forgiveness. This renders the past powerless, and you realize deeply that nothing you ever did, or that was ever done to you, could touch, even in the slightest, the radiant essence of who you are. The whole concept of forgiveness then becomes unnecessary. And how do I get to that point of realization? The questioner asks. When you surrender to what is and become fully present, the past ceases to have any power. You do not need it anymore. Presence is the key. The now is the key. How will I know I have surrendered? When you no longer need to ask the question. Thank you so much for listening to this audiobook. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more amazing stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Your support means everything. Please like, share, and leave a comment below.